saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth.
Exultatiam angelicator pacelorum, exultant divina mysteria, et pro tanti regis victoria, tuba insonens salutaris. Gaudeat et telos, tantis irradiata fulgoribus, et eterni regis splendore illustrata, totius orbis essentia.
Ever since the events of September 23, 2015, where these two beasts came together for a historic event in which Pope Francis spoke to a joint session of Congress, I have followed the relationship of these entities in detail. Therefore, when Donald Trump took office, I took the position that Donald Trump was not a Christian savior appointed by the Lord, but the new head of the beast of the earth.
But have you ever asked God for forgiveness? I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I think if I do something wrong, I think I just try and make it right. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't. Now, when I take, when we go in church and when I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker, I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness. And I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed, okay?
I stated on record in January 2017 that he and Pope Francis would come together, despite opposition from the mainstream media and many of my subscribers, who stated that the two were so diametrically opposed that they would not meet. And so here we are on May 24th, 2017, where these two leaders have come together seeking common goals, that is, the unification of religions in the spirit of peace, solidarity, and combating extremism. All in all, their meeting lasted less than an hour, and on its surface, there was some symbolism that I had anticipated. That is, Trump and his family would submit to Pope Francis. Sure enough, they did so as Melania, Ivanka, and their aide all wore black veils and black dresses, which is a common practice of submission or respect amongst formal female visitors to the Vatican. This is in stark contrast to the fact that none of these women or any of the women in the Trump entourage wore any head covering at all during their visit to Saudi Arabia. However, the symbolism goes much, much deeper than this, and it is in regards to the gift that Donald Trump presented to Pope Francis. So what is this gift and what prophetic significance does it have? First, let me help you understand how God communicates with me and how he said that I must focus on Donald's gift. In running On Point Preparedness, I tirelessly research news articles, books, and even ancient texts. These activities, along with my full-time job, 2 children, and wife, prevent me from getting back to hobbies and the actual original founding purpose of On Point Preparedness, which was based on wilderness survival. 3 days earlier, on May 21st, 2017, with what little free time I had, I picked up the following wild edible book from my collection of about 12 or so wild edible books. Each of these books is several hundred pages long and contain information about hundreds of different plants. I was only able to read a single section about one plant, which I had not researched before, and that is the North American lotus plant, known as the Nelumbo lutea. This event by itself is essentially meaningless. That is, until I recognized that one of the gifts that Donald Trump presented to Pope Francis was a bronze sculpture of the exact lotus species I was reading about 3 days earlier. Is it mere coincidence that of all the gifts that Donald Trump could present to Pope Francis, it would be one species of plant out of several thousands of species of plants? And that I, one who committed to his subscribers that this event would be prophetic and that I would be analyzing the symbolism, would have read about this very same species only 3 days earlier. So what is the important symbolism? The lotus is one of the most occult and ancient symbols of the natural world. And the fact that Donald Trump chose this sculpture, which was entitled Rising Above, is of grave concern. The lotus is the flower sacred to the Aryan Hindus, Egyptians, Buddhists, and more. References to it are found in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Jewish mystic religion of Kabbalism, and several other pagan religion texts and sculptures. For the occult, it represents the divine rebirth unto enlightenment, an abstract concept that is brought to life in the concrete or visible form of a lotus. It is, in essence, the same symbolism as the enlightenment of the all-seeing third eye. To name a few examples of its prevalence, you can see this in the occult film I, Pet Goat 2, where a lotus flower is seen blooming at the heels of then President Obama. His face grows stark as he witnesses the reality of this transformative stage of enlightenment. In Egypt, you can see here the 4 sons of Horus being birthed out of the lotus flower. In Buddhism, Buddha is frequently attributed to holding the lotus, and the list goes on and on. The reason why the occult reveres this flower and its symbolism of rebirth unto enlightenment is best described by Helena P. Blavatsky, who is the co-founder of the Theosophical Society, and she writes specifically on the lotus flower. For reference, the Theosophical Society shares ideology and partnership with the Lucis Trust, an organization that directly worships Lucifer and states that he is a misrepresented angel that sacrificed himself for the good of mankind. In her book, The Secret Doctrine, she references a passage from the Kabbalistic manuscripts, which states, pointing to like signification was the lotus growing in the waters of the Nile. Its mode of growth peculiarly fitted it as a symbol of reproductive activities. The flower of the lotus, which is the bearer of the seed for reproduction, as the result of its maturing, is connected by its placenta-like attachment with Mother Earth, or the womb of Isis, through the water of the womb, that is, the river Nile, by means of the long cord-like stalk, the umbilicus. Nothing can be plainer than the symbol, and to make it perfect in its intended signification, a child is sometimes represented as seated in or issuing from the flower. So you can now see how the occult viewed the flower as a symbol of rebirth as a child, or this rebirth into enlightenment, represented by a child coming out of the flower head. The Kabbalistic manuscript continues with the sexual and reproductive symbolism of the lotus. It states the locality of the womb is to be taken as the most holy place, the sanctum sanctorum, and the veritable temple of the living God. This falls in line with all occult practices as they practice sex magic and literally worship the female body. She also makes note of the lotus from the ancient Egyptian ritual Book of the Dead, which has a section entitled Transformation into the Lotus. It states, a head emerging from this flower, the god exclaims, I am the pure lotus, emerging from the luminous one. I carry the message of Horus. I am the pure lotus which comes from the solar fields. So, I believe that the Antichrist spirit was definitely at work in this meeting. Any multitude of gifts could have been given to Pope Francis. Books, medallions, sentimental items, other pieces of art, etc. But out of these multitudes, Donald Trump chose the lotus. As the Egyptian Book of the Dead states, is Donald affirming that he carries the message or gift of Horus, an enlightened message essentially from Lucifer. I guess that is up for you to decide.
Have you seen this crazy Hillsong Easter special that happened this year? This is just insane. Just check this out. I think you get the picture there. It's pretty disturbing. I don't think that looks anything like the Passion of the Christ from what I understand. You have guys that are basically dressed like they're from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome here. Look at that guy. He's got like a... It looks just like Mad Max from Beyond Thunderdome. He's got like a skull face on. He's got like skull drums, and it looks like some sort of black magic voodoo that they're doing. You know, this is just insane. And it even has this like gear, so it's like basically trying to be sort of like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Literally. I mean, what else could it be? Obviously, they didn't have, you know, skull drums when Jesus was on the cross. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, besides the fact that Easter is a pagan holiday and doesn't actually represent Pascha being the real holiday, or Passover, Jesus dying on the cross at Passover, being the Passover lamb, not Easter. Easter comes from the term Astarte or Astaroth. Go look that up in your Bible. It comes from the mystery religions of the Tower of Babel. Astaroth refers to Semiramis. This is where we get Easter bunnies and Easter eggs from, by the way. Semiramis coming down in an egg because Nimrod, or Baal, the sun god, told her it wasn't her time to die, so she had to come down in an egg. She hatched out of the egg. The first animal she saw was a rabbit, which she made to lay eggs. That's where we get Easter eggs from. We actually get it from Easter, or Astarte, or Semiramis, Nimrod's mother and wife. By the way, it was an incestuous relationship. A lot of people don't know that, but I thought I'd let you know. So, obviously it's on a pagan holiday, and then on top of that, they're doing basically Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, which is sort of like Sodom in a sense. I don't think this was happening when Jesus died on the cross. Let's just put it that way.
Hi guys, this is Ed and welcome to the Outer Dark. Recently I was doing some research and I found a number of very strange things regarding the symbolism at the Pope's audience hall at the Vatican, and I found it really disturbing. In fact, there was one detail that really did blow my mind. Anyway, stay tuned as the Outer Dark brings you 5 dark things about Paul IV's audience hall. Number 5. First, some context. I am a Christian and I was baptized, and at one stage I was even an altar boy. I'm not knocking the Catholic faith or anything like that, but it is my duty to follow the breadcrumbs, no matter where they go, even if I don't like what I find. Anyway, what is the audience hall in question? Well, it's a building in the Vatican where the Pope himself holds audience. It's named after Pope Paul IV and has a seating capacity of 6,300. It's designed in reinforced concrete by an Italian architect and was completed in 1971. The architect in question is noted for building large reinforced concrete structures, the kind that's very strong and is the public equivalent of a super bunker. Number 4. I will be covering the audience hall in depth in a moment and what very well blew my mind about it. But until then, I want to go over something else. That is the major feature behind the Pope that features inside the audience hall, namely this. Have you seen this before? I'd never seen it before myself and felt like I had entered the realm of the Mandela effect once again, on overload this time, since this is the most ominous thing I've ever seen in a while. This artwork was placed within the hall in 1977, as history states, and depicts, according to the Vatican, the resurrection of Christ emerging from a nuclear apocalypse. Now think to yourself for a moment. The audience hall is a reinforced concrete bunker, and the depiction of Christ shares the same connections with Christ himself rising from an atomic apocalypse. Not only that, but many people have said this is the most unchristian thing they have ever seen in a long time, even a number of Catholics I've talked to. For it looks like Christ's head is in fact missing, at least half of it. A number of Catholics don't even remember even seeing this before or looking at it, but it's been in the hall since, at least according to history, since 1977. The structure seems to have entered at least the internet's consciousness around 2012. I could find a couple of examples examples before that, but most seem to be post-2012, and there doesn't seem to be any pictures of it from the front. All seem to be taken from the side. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that because I found it really disturbing. Number 3. In order to understand what I'm going to show you about the audience hall, that is the following symbolism around the architecture. You have to understand a number of coarse conspiracies, most notably the work of researcher David Icke, at least the main theories he puts forward. For he states that there is an idea that the elites themselves rule through a secret bloodline within the global elite, and that there is an overriding superstructure of, well, alien influence, most notably reptilian. Number 2. I want to have a look very carefully at the inner architecture of the audience hall. I want you to look very carefully at this piece, this part of the architecture, and really just look at it. Now it's a circular eye-like architecture, and you can see there is almost a slit in it. It almost looks reptilian. Well, is your mind blowing yet? Probably not. You're probably laughing at me. Well, sorry, maybe I should take the photo from a different position. How about here? Now can you see it? This view is from the back of the hall. A view largely never taken, I might add, in any form. Maybe because if you see it on the front view, you can see this. Let me go through this in detail so you can see what I'm talking about. First, the eyes. Take a look. Now the scaly skin. Now the sharp teeth. Also note the pathway to the Pope himself and the fact that it resembles a snake's tongue or even a snake's tail. Now ask yourself this. Why is there a massive snake symbolism within the inner audience chamber of the Pope? Also note the architect who designed it. This project would have cost millions of dollars. And every design, everything you can think of, it's the job for the architect to entertain. They just don't design anything like this unless there is a reason behind it. So what is the snake a symbol of? Well, ask yourself that. What is the snake a symbol of within Christianity? Number 1. So what does this mean? Well, perhaps we need to go back to David Icke again. Let's go through David Icke's main hypothesis again. David Icke states that there's a global conspiracy where our very world is being ruled by reptilian aliens, that they rule this through control over bloodlines and vast amounts of other methods and resources. He states that the elites are not like us. They look like us, they act like us, but they're not like us. They are fundamentally different. They think different, and most importantly, they have different wants and needs, different desires. But at the end of the day, I'm just presenting what I find. It does not mean I'm right. Go out and do your own research, form your own conclusions, and come to your own opinions. These are just the dots I connect.
With great pomp, fanfare, and ceremony, Pope Francis, the head of the Jesuit order, announced through his cantor the imminent emergence, the near advent of the coming to light of the Antichrist.
Lucifer matutinus inveniat, ille in quam Lucifer qui nescit occasum, Christus filius tuus, qui regressus ab inferis, humano generis serenus illuxit, et tecum vivit et regnat in saecula saeculorum.
During this pronouncement, the cantor called Lucifer God, claiming Lucifer to be the father of Jesus Christ. The cantor acknowledged Lucifer as the Antichrist himself and worshipped him. To this, a great crowd and the whole world sang. This was the 3D ceremony that the Pope wanted to be seen worldwide. The announcement to the world, the son of perdition, this way comes.
Nox illuminatio mea, super eternis luminaribus misceatur, flammas eius, Lucifer matutinus indeniat, ille in quam Lucifer qui nescit occasum.
And here in slide 18, this is Bernini's canopy where the Pope sits. Now, underneath this, it's the representation of the Holy of Holies, blasphemously so. And in this representation, this would be in the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant would sit. And this is where the Pope blasphemously portrays himself to be sitting there in the Holy of Holies. And in this next slide, number 19, you can see the close-up of the pedestals that are underneath this twisted column that are there to represent Solomon's temple. And this thing is huge. It's several stories high. I mean, this thing is huge. And there on this pedestal at the bottom of these twisted columns, in slide 20 here, we have the 8 faces that are on the pedestals. And these 8 faces are faces of women that are giving birth, women in childbirth. And I believe the obvious symbolism here, this is just like Pope Joan bringing forth her child. I believe that this symbolism represents the birth that will come and of the final one that's going to sit underneath this canopy. And all of this symbolism and all of this scripture, it tells us a consistent story.
Even the nuclear war hoax, even the Cold War hoax of 1945 to 1989, it's all a lie. America today is ruled by the Jesuits of Rome because they are in control of the Council on Foreign Relations under the power of the high provincials from Jesuit universities. The most powerful being Jesuit Georgetown University. It's all a lie. All the wars in history are from the Jesuit general, under his installed puppet dictators all across the world who secretly and openly are loyal to the Pope of Rome. Every war is planned. The Black Pope today, Pope Francis, he is the Jesuit general controlling today's international intelligence community in the East and the West, and controlling his global terrorist network that he will use through Islam to destroy the Vatican and move his throne to the Temple Mount. The Jesuit general controls the world of finance, he controls the world of banking all across the planet. The Federal Reserve also, he controls it from the Inner City Corporation of London. We have a one world government today ruled over by the Black Pope. This is the world conspiracy. The Vatican is in control of the armies of the earth. They control China, they control Russia, they control all nations. This is the Holy Roman Empire of the Black Pope, even ruling Jerusalem completely today, and their Masonic Jewish Zionists who are preparing the way for the rebuilding of Solomon's temple, for the Black Pope who will be the final papal Caesar. This is the truth. This is the truth. America will be destroyed by the Jesuits of Rome. This is what they will do. They will bring down the economy and they will invade America. They will destroy Rome at the same time. This is why President Kennedy was killed, of course. He defied Rome. He defied the Jesuits. And in his place was placed President Lyndon Johnson, who was a traitor to the American people. And the truth of the matter is, whether people like to hear this or don't like to hear it, the fact is, you had many people that were pulling the strings. You had Francis Cardinal Spellman, who was in control of the CIA. But the truth of the matter is, the real assassin was actually Jackie Kennedy, later to become Jackie Onassis. She was the one that killed Kennedy at Dealey Plaza. That's the truth. No one would suspect that. It was a year before they brought the Zeebrugge film out to the American public. By that time, Oswald had been assassinated, Ruby had been poisoned, and they just brought all the misinformation and disinformation about Cuba and Russia and the mafia, and by that time people have been indoctrinated and mind controlled into all that disinformation, when in fact it was Jackie Kennedy, who was trained in Europe, in Paris to be Pacific, and she was trained by the CIA in many operations. She stayed with Onassis for a whole month before Dallas, and then after the murder went to marry Onassis, who was a high prince of Rome. He was an actual papal bloodline, very high papal bloodline. But you see, this conspiracy is deeper than what people think. Of course you have a structure. You have the Black Pope in control of his Jesuit provincials. They control the bishops, and the bishops control the presidents. This is the truth. It's exactly the same with 9/11. Exactly the same structure. You know, Edward Cardinal Egan gave his command for that papal inquisition against the Twin Towers, of course, to justify, you know, an attack on the Middle East and against Islam, really. And when you look into it, you really have Jesuit-trained CFR, CIA Director, Knight of Malta, George G. Tennant, Director of the CIA, and you have the high-level Masonic Bush bloodline, bondsman from Yale. Also, they're actually, you know, of the papal bloodline, but also of the House of Stuart. You have the Bin Laden family financial dynasty tied together through the Carlyle Group, all connected through the Knights of Malta. They're all Vatican Knights, and these people should be really, of course, brought to trial and put in prison for high treason. But that will never happen in our lifetime. But they will stand before a greater judge. They will stand before Almighty God and give an account for their crimes against this world, against their oppression, tyranny. The Black Pope rules the earth. Everything you know in history is a lie. It's all a lie. It's being rewritten. True history is suppressed. It's covered up. Everything in the Bible is being fulfilled today. Revelation 17 and 18 reveals that there's no hope. You must come out of Babylon the Great. You must come out of the beast system. And that means the vast majority of Protestant churches also. They are no longer part of the Reformation. They're in apostasy. They're under the power of the Vatican. That includes Anglicanism, Baptism, Methodism, every ism. The Methodist Church is Romanized, Jesuitized, Illuminized, all under the power of Rome. Most of the Pentecostal churches are. So don't just think I'm talking about the Vatican, you know, controlling governments and controlling all religions. No, it's a worldwide conspiracy. Worldwide. That's right. And the Muslims will be used to destroy and attack Israel, but obviously they will be under the power of Russia, Gog and Magog through the Eurasian Union. That's the truth. The Vatican will use Islam to be its sword of inquisition, bringing about the destruction of Rome, the destruction of Mecca, Medina, and even the Jerusalem mosques and the Dome of the Rock. We're about to enter the Great Tribulation, and we have to lift up our voice and expose this great Jesuit world conspiracy. And the true murderers are our presidents, they are our prime ministers, they are our leaders. Those that we think we elect into office, they are our enemy. They are the true murderers. They are the ones that are bringing destruction across the face of the earth. And the greatest murderer today is Pope Francis. My name is Alan Lamont. Thank you for listening.